These days, especially when you look at AAA, bigger is better. And that doesn't necessarily always mean just the game. So a lot of these games that are huge, and some of which, were not cross-media when those IPs started. For example, God of War is a really good one. Now suddenly are getting live action films, and they're getting comic book series, and they're getting various book series, and maybe a TV show, and they're doing all of these things to just grow and grow and grow an IP. So what's happening is that companies are looking in all areas, so not just gaming companies, but companies in all aspects of media are looking to see what they can do to make their media grow. I think one of my favorite examples of a really, really robust cross-media brand is Pokemon. Many people in the Americas know Pokemon from the video games, but it's the card games that really originated the Pokemon brand, and the video games only came later. And so, but now you had the card games, which are still hugely successful. You have the video games, which I think there's over 50 video games now in that IP. You have various TV shows. You have Ash, who is finally retiring after 40 years, numerous films and everything, and all of these are hugely successful. So it's an amazing example of cross-media that's been around for a very, very long time, longer than many people even think so. The cross-media aspects tend to focus on either popular characters or popular conflicts within the game, the War of the Roses, or something that happened in Neo Tokyo 2099. And so it's delving into these very specific things where players have an interest, but the game wasn't able to fully encapsulate everything that matters to the stories. And that's how the cross media then blossoms from a video game context. I would say that a guideline, but not necessarily a rule, is that for linear games, you want to follow story elements from the other media that you're partaking in a little bit more closely. Either they're visiting areas that already existed in the movies and the books, and you can give players that familiarity. So while the player themselves may not be a character that's specifically from the books or the movies or whatever, they're constantly visiting areas or encountering people from the media that players recognize. The reason why this is important is because a linear story is very, very focused on that player. And so if you want to remind them of the world they're in, they need to visit and see people and have these sort of tie-ins with people that the character might know, that makes their involvement a lot more interesting and a lot more impactful on the other media. So this is why many games tend to steer away from using very important characters from the cross medium or locations that have a limited timeline. Games will create additional characters that fit in the world so that they can tell the stories they want with this character without having to worry about where they fit. What matters is picking a time and making sure that everything they do stays true to the time. Games also have a luxury in that many times books will, as they're talking about their worlds, they're talking about some large, expansive worlds, but they only focus on a few very specific locations. What that means is that games can create other cities. They can create other areas of the same planet. Even when an entire media takes place in a single city, games can talk about neighborhoods that haven't been talked about because cities are super large. The real thing, like when you're creating an IP, is you just want things to stick in people's minds. You don't want it to be, okay, that's just another jungle. That's just another desert. That's just it's one other hero, whatever, not a big deal. You want to give them something memorable. And there's no magic bullet to make this happen. It just comes down to the finesse of the writers and the game designers at making these characters likable or hateable sometimes, and making these locations places that people will want to see again and again and again. And that's what allows people to make, these other, like the comic book and the TV show and the anime and whatever it may be, to focus on these other aspects of that character.